All right, people. As I told you, this show would kick off around 1:30-ish. We're a little early, 1:27. Thank you all for joining me so much last night, as I am shocked that I'm actually on today because I thought I was going to pop a blood vessel in my neck yesterday after watching the debacle that was the Buffalo Bills game. 47-10, the Bills losing to the New Orleans Saints. In today's show on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, welcome everybody to the show once again. I am Ryan Thomas, bringing you another edition of the Thomas Take. And before I get this show on the road, I would personally like to get a drink of water, and I'm going to do that. So, give me just one sec here. So, everybody yesterday joined me on the show, and I really appreciated it. I woke up this morning to over 10,000 views on the show. 10,000 people tuned in, reached 10,000 plus. Then I checked it, about an hour ago, and it was around 12,000 to 13,000. So I am just so thankful for the people that have continued to support me and this show, that have chimed in, that have given their take on the show, whether it be through the Thomas Take Mailbag or through comments in the comments section below each and every video that is on my Thomas Take podcast Facebook page, which is the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, of course. You can check out my Bills post-game show and many other Thomas Takes on that page. And I really appreciate everybody tuning in and kind of sounding off. So today's episode is dedicated to the Thomas Take Mailbag Monday. Welcome back, another edition of the Mailbag. And I fielded questions from friends and family that I had not heard from in quite some time. And I thought, who better to ask in terms of, who better to ask in terms of the people that listen to your show. I got a lot of different questions, some about the Buffalo Bills, some in regards to the world of mixed martial arts. One question from My Fantasy Sports Talks, Brandon Reed, really took my attention, really got my attention, and that was if I could pick a 30 for 30 that that hasn't been made yet, what would be the subject matter of that 30 for 30? So the last 30 for 30 that wrapped up was the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. And some of the most intriguing stories in sports, in sports entertainment, involve the world leader in sports, quote-unquote, entertainment, and that is the WWE, the WWF, the NWA back in the day, and Ric Flair obviously is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, definitely in the top three, in my personal opinion, definitely belongs on Mount Rushmore. Could definitely make a case on the Mount Rushmore of wrestling. You could definitely make the case that Ric Flair changed not just the wrestling side of things, but changed all of sports in the way that athletes market themselves. He was that guy that really broke shattered the mold of really endorsing yourself, creating yourself as your own business, and Ric Flair mastered that art. So I've said this once before. One 30 for 30 that I would love to see get made would be a very tough 30 for 30, a very tough 30 for 30 to watch. But 30 for 30 has kind of shattered the mold on their own right of putting out stories that might be some of the most disturbing stories in sports history. You had the Duke scandal. You had there was a basketball player that got killed shortly before, or actually overdosed shortly after he was drafted. The O.J. Simpson, the life of O.J. Simpson. So many. There's so many I can't even really count, but those few kind of really stuck out to me. One 30 for 30 that I would really like to see, and this would be an extension of the pro wrestling world, would be for Chris Benoit. And I know that some people will be like, well, they'll never do that. They'll never put out a public story a public documentary on Chris Benoit, but I really think that it should be opened, that can of worms should be opened, that the WWE, so to speak, should kind of own that and say, hey, this did happen, but let's talk about it, because that story, more than any in pro wrestling, could really change lives in terms of wrestlers not taking the performance-enhancing drugs, in terms of wrestlers that have gone down that path that really have brainwashed themselves with drugs, with prescription pills, with becoming an addict in the wrestling world. And in terms of just 3 letters, CTE, Chris Benoit's story really was one that really opened the eyes of sports fans to CTE before football really ever acknowledged it. Upon the autopsy, Chris Benoit was found to have had the brain of an 88-year-old man. So that is something that I think that would be interesting for me, because not only was it a horrifying story, it was a story that was a tragedy, because this guy traveled all around the world. He was a part of some of the biggest matches in WWE history. He was a part of an era that was a great era. You had, Kurt Angle and Eddie Guerrero, who also passed away. Chris Benoit, DX, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels, and The Rock, and all those guys. Chris Benoit was somewhat a part of that era in the ECW days and stuff like that. So, Chris Benoit, for me, was somebody that was one of my favorite wrestlers. And upon 2006, 2007, hearing about the tragedy in which Chris Benoit took the lives of his wife and his son, only to take his own life in the end, that is a story that is as horrifying as any in sports in recent memory. And it's a story that would definitely tug on the heartstrings of many people that have dealt with loss due to suicide and things like that. It would just strike so many chords. I want to know more about that story. That's a story that I don't think we got the full details on that story. And not even, there's some people that put the memes out there of him and they say certain things and make jokes. It's not really a joking matter. This guy's body was literally deteriorating, and it made him go insane and ultimately kill the 2 people in his life that were closest to him, and then killing himself. So I think that this is a story that 30 for 30 wise would really push the envelope of bringing awareness to CTE, bringing awareness to steroid abuse and substance abuse. And it could be something that in sports, it could really benefit many, many people. I also got a question from Pat Clancy in regards to Rick Dennison. And I wanted to touch on this, for this particular mailbag segment. Rick Dennison, the offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills, has definitely come under fire under the last few weeks. The last 2 weeks in particular, the Buffalo Bills are coming off 2 straight losses, 2 devastating losses, one to the New York Jets and one to the before-mentioned New Orleans Saints. One loss was 34-21, the other was 47-10. So things are not trending in the right direction for the Bills offense or for the Bills defense, and just for the Bills in general with the schedule that they have remaining. So Pat asked me, Pat Fister and Pat Clancy asked me kind of the same question. What are my thoughts on Rick Dennison as the offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills? I should go out on a limb here and say that this is kind of a double-edged sword for me. Rick Dennison being the offensive coordinator these last, since the start of this season, I've liked some things that he's done. I haven't liked some of the things that he's done. To start the game yesterday, I thought that the play calling was very interesting. It was highlighting a lot of the players' skill sets. They ran their offense as if they were a college-style offense with many hesitation runs, delays, things of that nature. But anytime you finish the game, you're the Buffalo Bills, and LaShawn McCoy has 8 carries for 49 yards, 36 of which were on 1 carry, the second carry of the game. That is a real problem. LaShawn McCoy needs to have 20 touches a game at least 20 touches a game, not carries, touches, between carrying the ball and getting the ball through the air. This guy is as integral a piece to the Buffalo Bills as any player on their 53-man roster. So why he would only have 8 carries is beyond me. I don't know if he was nicked during the game or banged up during the game, but that is my biggest takeaway in terms of Rick Dennison. And then at the quarterback position, we know that Tyrod is handicapped in terms of his skill set. He doesn't have the full skill set of a franchise quarterback. So Rick Dennison has to kind of, quote-unquote, tailor his offense to Tyrod Taylor, and it is tailor-made for Tyrod Taylor to succeed, and it's not working due to the fact that they have kind of forced Tyrod at some point, in some instances, throw from the pocket, which is not his best skill set, which is not highlighting his best skill as an NFL quarterback. I am very mixed on this because part of me doesn't know if it's Rick, part of me doesn't know if it's Tyrod, because I've seen this with Tyrod dating back to last year. So is it more so the fact that Rick Dennison doesn't have the right players to fit his scheme, or is it more so the fact that Rick Dennison is not calling the right plays? I think it's a little bit of both, to be honest. But if I were to say which is more to blame, anytime, I've said this, I said this last night, anytime a quarterback leaves a game with 56 yards passing in a game that is a complete blowout, there is a real problem with the quarterback position. The quarterback position needs to change. Nate Peterman's ready. Nate Peterman could easily do much better than Tyrod Taylor if he were to start next week, in my humble opinion. So I really appreciate all the questions that everybody has been sending me. I've been trying to do more mailbag stuff, but I've just been so busy with the Facebook and building the audience on there that I haven't been on Spreaker.com as much as I'd like to be, and YouTube as much as I'd like to be. But we'll definitely revert back to that moving forward. But one topic of discussion that I want to end this show on, now that I've answered the 2 main mailbag questions that I chose for the Mailbag Monday show, Sean McDermott gave his press conference yesterday post defeat, and obviously they asked him if Tyrod Taylor is going to be in play for the starting quarterback position. Will he play? Will he start? And Sean McDermott left no stone unturned and said that Tyrod is their starter. If things do not change as far as next week versus the LA Chargers, and Tyrod looks just as bad as he did this past week, he should be benched in the first quarter, let alone the third. I'm very shocked that a rookie head coach that knows he is on the precipice of quite possibly being in the playoffs in his first year as an NFL head coach is electing to go with Tyrod yet again when Tyrod was a clear factor as to why they lost the game. Yes, for all the people that say this, it is a team game. It's never on one guy's shoulders, but they have no passing attack whatsoever. No matter what weapons they have no passing attack whatsoever as long as Tyrod Taylor is taking snaps from under center. It's just the reality of the situation now. We have to accept it. We have to move on. We have to consider it as 3 years of the Tyrod Taylor experiment were bridge years for the Buffalo Bills to find their franchise quarterback, whether that is Nate Peterman or whether that is a 2017 NFL draft rookie quarterback. That remains to be seen. Or could quite possibly be a veteran. But if I'm calling the shots, I would revert to Nate Peterman. I would move towards Nate Peterman being the starter versus the LA Chargers. LA's defense is not that great. Should be a better first career start for Nate Peterman, being that he's going into a stadium with 30,000 seats in it. He's not facing the San Diego fans that the Chargers used to have, the fans that the San Diego Chargers should be a team still. San Diego should still have that team, in my personal opinion. So I think that the writing should be on the wall for Peterman to start, but that's Sean McDermott's call. Does he feel like Tyrod gives him the best chance to win? Unfortunately, yes, he does. I'm Ryan Thomas. That was the Thomas Take Mailbag Monday. Thank you all for submitting your questions. Take care, everybody.